Hello, my name is DLTedone, and welcome to my presentation. Today we will be learning about Dorothea Orem and her nursing theory, self-care deficit. Objectives. By the time you finish listening to my presentation, you should be able to walk away with learning what a nursing theory is and why we need to know about it, who Dorothea Orem was as a person, the self-care deficit theory as a product of its time, 5 main points of self-care deficit theory, and its application to a real-life clinical setting. What is a nursing theory? Just as a theory is a system that explains a group of scientific facts and phenomena, a nursing theory is a theoretical framework that explains nursing. According to Nurse Labs, nursing theories are organized bodies of knowledge to define what nursing is, what nurses do, and why they do it. So what? Theoretical frameworks can be thought of as different lenses that we can put on to view nursing in a different way. The nursing theory we will be exploring today is Dorothea Orem's self-care deficit. And now for a brief biography on Dorothea Orem. She was born July 15, 1914 in Baltimore, Maryland, to a construction worker and a homemaker. She was the youngest of 2 daughters. She earned her nursing diploma from Providence Hospital School of Nursing in the 1930s in Washington, D.C., and then she went on to complete her BSN in 1939 and her MSN in 1945 from the Catholic University of America. She went on to attain several honorary doctorate degrees. And now for her career. 1949 to 1957, Orem worked for the Indiana State Board of Health Division of Hospital and Institutional Services. Her goal was to upgrade the quality of nursing in hospitals throughout her state. While at Indiana Board of Health, Orem developed her definition of nursing practice, which we will explore later during this presentation. She served on the curriculum subcommittee at Catholic University, where she continued developing her concepts of nursing and self-care. She published her articulations of these concepts in 1971, 1980, and 1995. Orem's self-care deficit theory continued to percolate throughout and even past her retirement in 1984. Something that interested me as I was doing my research for this project was that Orem's thoughts on the goal that self-care strives to meet were developed at the same time Maslow was creating his hierarchy of needs. The hierarchy of needs should sound pretty familiar to us. It was up and down RN school. In this pyramid, basic needs of life and safety form the foundation, and self-actualization sits way at the top, that little green triangle there. Attaining all levels of Maslow's hierarchy would meet Orem's definition of health, which is to be structurally and functionally whole and sound. In this way, it is very possible that Orem's self-care deficit model was a product of its time. And now for a little bit about Dorothea Orem's self-care deficit. Self-care is what an individual has to do on their own behalf in order to maintain his or her life, physical, mental, and spiritual health and well-being. So it's a little bit more involved than just ADLs. In this way, self-care agency is the human's ability to engage in self-care. It's affected by the basic conditioning factors of age, gender, developmental state, health, their environment, and having the resources they need to take care of themselves. Self-care demand is the sum total of these actions the individual needs to perform. A self-care deficit is when the individual finds themselves unable to perform these actions. or as Orem may have put it, a loss of self-care agency. Nursing agency is where we come in. Just as self-care agency is what helps people to take care of their basic needs, nursing agency is what helps us to be nurses. These resources consist of our education, training, experience, and supports. These help us to meet the self-care deficit that the individual is not able to perform. For the community that I wanted to focus on, I have chosen the disabled community. As it applies to this community, self-care is what the disabled individual has to do in order to maintain his or her health. Depending on the status of the individual, this means going to multiple health providers, taking their medications, keeping wounds clean and dry, and limiting pressure on pressure points. The individual has the option of attending religious services if they so choose. Self-care agency is what the individual is able to do to maintain his or her own health. This varies by developmental age, which may or may not match his or her physical age, his or her ability to ambulate, their cognition, their mental health, his or her ability to make decisions, the ability to obtain transport to his or her medical and other assistance appointments, and his or her cash handling limit. Self-care demand, the same as everybody else: hygiene, food, water, and shelter. This also includes the medical appointments again, medications, wound dressing, and psychological needs. In other words, it is the sum total of the previous point. A self-care deficit is inability to perform basic hygiene, whether by physical handicap or by the psychological handicaps of anxiety or depression. Inability to transport oneself to all of the medical, social assistance, psychological, or spiritual appointments necessary to maintain physical, mental, and spiritual health. Inability to ambulate or change position. Inability to obtain food or shelter with income from a conventional job, or inability to pay entirely for the self-care demand. Inability to comprehend the consequences of his or her own actions, whether as a result of cognitive or psychological barriers. And finally, inability to socialize at an age-appropriate level. Nursing agency, that happens to fall a lot into what I do because I happen to work for the disabled population. In this setting, nursing is the specialized assistance the nurse will give in order to assist the individual with obtaining the above. The nurse supervises and trains direct support providers, or DSPs, to assist the individual with basic hygiene, taking vital signs, performing first aid, and passing medication. After the DSP goes through a certification course, he or she is qualified to give those medications through oral, topical, subcutaneous for diabetics, and if necessary, anal routes. Additional certifications are available for administering food and medicine by PEG tube. The RN gathers data on wounds, lab values, vital signs, medical appointment records, and medical progress notes, and performs assessments with that data. He or she creates care plans and coordinates medical care through various medical and psychological appointments. The nurse also coordinates with various other care providers within the agency, including physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapy, and dietary care, as well as the managers of the group homes in which the individuals reside. The nurse also ensures that the house and its medical care are compliant with OPWDD regulations. Final reflections. I think what I got out of Orem's self-care deficit really helped inform my nursing care of individuals with disabilities. Another way of considering a disability is to call that disability a self-care deficit. In that sense, Orem's theoretical framework is an excellent fit for the disabled population. A nurse's role is to limit the impact of their disabilities. One of my coworkers actually made a good point the other day. It is not the individual's job to consider the infrastructure that supports them. After all, a well-oiled machine is not typically a noisy one. It hums quietly in the background. If I am doing my job and scheduling my patients' medical appointments, educating them on their health, collaborating with various health professionals, ensuring safety with medications, and supporting their independence whenever possible, the individual is too busy living a full life to worry too much about their care team. If the care system that supports a disabled individual is functioning as it should hardly be noticed at all. And this plays into my vision statement. By meeting the physical, mental, social, and spiritual needs of adults with disabilities, the nurse empowers them to live their lives to the fullest. And that concludes my presentation on Dorothea Orem's Self-Care Deficit. What are your thoughts? I look forward to reading about them on the discussion questions. Goodbye.